Can Quinshon Judkins be totally trusted as an RB2 for fantasy in his second season? Does Harold Fannin Jr. deserve to be an established elite tight end in year two? We answer those Cleveland Browns questions on this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer. My co-host, Michelle Matjuk, is on vacation. But we'll continue with our series looking at all 32 teams in the preseason, see where their players should be drafted in fantasy, focusing today on the 2026 Cleveland Browns as we continue looking at the AFC North. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockdown. That's Odoo, odoo.com/lockdown. Today's show, we'll focus on the Browns. This is the last team we need to break down from the AFC North. Michelle Matjuk, my co-host again, will be back to break it down with me our six boldest predictions for players and teams in this division on the next show. But today we're going to look at first Quinshon Judkins. We'll get into him. He's the best fantasy asset on the team. Then later we'll look at Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, anybody else, those rookie wide receivers, do they have any value that we're looking for as deep sleepers? Then in between, we'll look at their best asset, most consistent asset from last year, the now second year tight end, Harold Fannin Jr. So let's dive right into the value of Judkins. When should you jump on Quinshon Judkins here in 2026? Now let's look at where he finished, RB24 last season. So that put him in the last of RB2s in 12 team leagues. He averaged 10 points per game in half point PPR. His ranking right now in that same format is 21. So let's look at the cons first. Let's be pessimistic first. Bad offense with quarterback questions still with Sanders versus Watson. Now a worse defense without Myles Garrett. This team was already only a 41.1% rushing offense last season, so it's not going to get better. It could get worse here because the defense should stink a lot more without Garrett. That's how important Garrett is to that defense, and they're going to take some lumps. Todd Monken takes over the offense. You also have another concern here with Judkins coming off a major ankle and fibula injury, hit his rookie wall. That's how it ended, and then he was down for the season. Now let's look at the good news. There's little competition left on this roster. You have Monken there, who comes from using Derrick Henry in Baltimore, and he's got his run game coordinator as well as his offense coordinator. So they're going to focus on trying to make Judkins that type of power back. That's the type of back he is. He can reel off some chunk runs, but he's a great finisher in the red zone, as we know from Ohio State. That's the difference between him and Travion Henderson. Henderson is more of a home run hitter. As we saw last year, he can reel off those 50, 60-yard runs with no problem. Judkins is going to give you steady production. What that means is he can run for nice work here, but it comes down to his volume and his talent and making the most of what he has. Another con would be the rebuilding offensive line in Cleveland. How much does that come into play? I mean, the offensive line was in near shambles last year, but now you lose Joel Bitonio, who's retired, some other changes up front, try to make this a decent offensive line again. All that strength that they used to have with Teller and Bitonio. Teller's moved on. Bitonio's not in the league anymore. There are definitely some questions up front when you look at the Cleveland blocking system. So blocking is an issue. Potentially not running enough on this team is an issue. Not scoring enough as a offense is an issue. But when we look at this, it really comes down to how much you trust Judkins' talent and volume to overcome all the limitations of the supporting cast and the environment in Cleveland. Now, I do love the talent quite a bit, but to say he's going to finish 3 points higher on average, that means probably looking at 11 plus points per game and half point PPR. That's difficult. When you look at that, I mean, if you want to break it down, you have to get a touchdown and then you can get away with 50 yards. But otherwise, you're going to have to get it done a lot on the ground. He's not a big time pass catcher. And they do have a guy that can do that in Dylan Sampson. So Judkins just has a lot of things that are not going for him. His talent is going to be there. There's not much else to give to here. We have Raheem Sanders. He got a handful of red zone carries last year as a third stringer. You have Sampson, who was banged up himself there. Now, we look at, is that value good for Quinshon Judkins? I don't think it is. RB21 is a little too rich for my blood. I would want to be more below his value for last season. So we look at his number, RB24. I'd be more comfortable taking RB25 to 30. That puts him in the flex range. I don't want to invest in him as an RB2 necessarily because of the injuries, because of the offense, all the surroundings here. Now, I do like Dylan Sampson, by the way. I mean, you did say, is there anybody else? But I'll spoil that a little bit and say Dylan Sampson's the other Brown I'd want to look at in the backfield at RB49. I think he is very cheap, obviously. You don't have to use a relatively high pick to take him. You can take him several rounds later in the double digits, and a good flyer because, again, he's a good pass catcher. He has an element that Judkins does not have. And for some reason, if Judkins is slow out of the gate with a fibula, an ankle injury, we can look at Sampson. And I think it's something we just need to monitor in terms of what health we see from Judkins in training camp and the preseason. If they have any doubts that he can be on the field and be effective and see that key workload right away, we look at Sampson. Overall, this is not the best situation. Bad teams with running backs, not exactly where you want to go. But Judkins is so talented, you're going to be teased by that. Just don't overpay for him. Don't buy into the hype. I think it's okay if you believe in him to take him in that 21 to 24 range. I personally would not because it's quite a risk, and there's some other guys that you can look at that have some higher upside in that range. So that's what I'm a little bit concerned about, right? So I just think he's a little too rich right now. His volume is there, but again, his value still is not exactly what I would like quite yet. And there's some guys around again. Travion Henderson, someone to look at. David Montgomery is bound to get his value. Bashal Tootin is still in a good situation. So these are some guys. DeAndre Swift behind him as well. Him and Kyle Monangai were very productive. And yeah, Bucky Irving and Cam Scatterbo. These are kind of two debates that you're going to look at right with Quinshon Judkins right above him. But I think he's ranked just about right, maybe a few spots lower than I would more be willing. You also have Jadarian Price, you have Chuba Hubbard, some of these other guys there that might have a little bit more upside than Judkins in the type of offenses they are in this season. So Quinshon Judkins, just not the value that I'm going to be targeting in drafts. Dylan Sampson for sure. I'll take a flyer on him. He's talented enough. He's a good back out of Tennessee in his own right. I thought he would end up on another team to have a better shot at key touches, but again, he's on standby. It's a little bit different coaching staff. Chance to impress here for Sampson. And again, if he can do something here and Judkins has a setback, he's definitely going to be the better value here. I'm not saying draft Sampson in a lot of leagues. I'm saying be valuable with that pick on Judkins. Don't be too expensive, and then look at Sampson later if you had to make a decision. Do I want to take Judkins at RB21 or Sampson at RB49? If you had to make one of those, I'm going to say Sampson at 49 and take your chances with somebody else at RB2 and take Sampson more as a lottery pick for your backfield depth. All right, we will get into Harold Fannin Jr., the best second year asset on this team. Then we'll look at Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson. Then they've got those receivers, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, two rookies, Jerry Judy. Are any of these guys worth something? We'll check all that out here as we finish our look at the Cleveland Browns. All right, I told you at the top, this episode is brought to you by Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing your software. The best organization, though, that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. That's true in sports, just like it is in a business. So that's what we need. A team in the NFL needs everything clicking. We saw all the operations of the Seahawks, their running game, their quarterback, obviously their defense leading the way, but they had all that was necessary to win it all last season. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try it for free today at odoo.com/lockdown. That's Odoo, odoo.com/lockdown. All right, Harold Fannin Jr. is a very interesting topic here because he does have some tight end intrigue. Don't forget to check out the Every Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with Michelle and I, which will be important as we get closer to draft time there in August. And other listeners of the show, tap the link in the show notes or go to https locked on fantasyfootball.supercast.com. So go there, or you can look on YouTube there, lockedonpodcast.com/everyday to learn more about how it works and how to better support our show and get better access to Michelle and I here as you're prepping for your drafts in August. All right, Fannin, that's somebody we definitely want to prepare for to think about drafting here. He's tight end 6 on the board. There's not much competition here on this team. Very high percent of targets here. 21.6 was his target share last year. That's very high for a tight end. And he basically was the guy. Whenever Shedeur Sanders was out there, that's what you're going to see, a lot of targeting of Fannin. Now, they did a little bit with their receiving core, but two of them are rookies, Concepcion and Boston. Judy is hanging around, but he isn't doing too much. You have Cedric Tillman and Isaiah Bond. So there's really not much to see there in this depth chart. And that's why he's hanging steady at tight end 6. He was tight end 8 last year, 7.2 points per game on average in half point PPR. There's also no more David Njoku, but that kind of felt that way a lot last year, right? Where David Njoku was a bit of a lame duck tight end for this team, and it was the Fannin show about to happen here as receiver, especially with Sanders starting most of the games at quarterback. So Todd Monken, he used Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews well in Baltimore, so you figure that's a good bump here for Fannin. Now let's look at actually where Fannin is in relation to other tight ends. Like I really like this kid. He's very talented. He's good in the red zone. He's got soft hands. You knew when he was blowing up the combine coming out of Bowling Green that him or Elijah Arroyo, somebody was going to stand out. Arroyo, of course, faded in the background a little bit with injuries in Seattle to AJ Barner, while Fannin used this opportunity to jump Njoku and make Njoku expendable here in Cleveland as a receiving tight end. So very talented player. He deserves all that love here to be in the top 12. There's no question that he's a solid starter that you can target. But how high do you want to take him? You have Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft. Now, assuming Kraft is healthy, that would make sense that all these guys are going ahead. But how about the guys that are going after Sam Laporta, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, and George Kittle? Now, Michelle has expressed if George Kittle's healthy, if there's any hint of him being healthy, he should not be going behind Fannin. So there's one. Sam Laporta, we really like the rebound potential this season with Drew Petzing, who was McBride's coordinator in Arizona, coming to Detroit. So those are the two guys you like. Now, there's an argument to be made with Kyle Pitts, who scores as many touchdowns as the year he's been in the league. But we'll see how that plays out because it's Tua Tagovailoa. He's going to adjust to a new offense. But guess who's there? It's Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees, the combination that helped Harold Fannin have that production last year. So it's kind of interesting that you've got Pitts, Laporta, maybe benefiting from guys who helped tight ends last year, and Kittle. Sure. Then you come down to Travis Kelce. And Kelce, can he rebound? Does he have one more big year left in him? Can he kind of cut through those wide receivers who should be key for Patrick Mahomes? I think where you draw the line is right there. I think there's a strong argument to be made where Kittle, if healthy, Laporta and Pitt should all go ahead of Fannin. Kelce may be the cutoff there, and Dalton Kincaid is too volatile here. So those are the guys that are right ranked behind. So I don't mind Harold Fannin Jr. I'm just not going to overpay to get him. I'd rather take him right where he was, tight end 8 or tight end 9, because things could go down for sure. Like if they have a quarterback change from Sanders to Watson, you got to be prepared for that. If one of these rookies, Concepcion or Boston, is a bigger factor at wide receiver, you got to be prepared for that. But what offsets that a little bit to give Fannin a nice little floor? No Njoku, he's going to be a key target no matter what. He's too athletic and create mismatches. I'm not going to go real nuts to get him, especially with Laporta, Pitts, Kittle there. And look, Kelsey, there's a chance that he could look good and push him down. So when you add those three guys there, I would say, hey, take him more tight end 9. And if you can have a tight end 8 or tight end 9, I'm okay with that for Fannin. But you're not going to get much of a discount with him. Let's just say that because there's some buzz going into year 2. I think you can get solid return. There's just not much extra value. If you're looking for a solid starter and all the guys 6, 7, or 8 tight ends are off the board, then you're in really good shape to take him. But you don't want to take him as that tight end 6 at the expense of Laporta, Pitts, and Kittle. That's my opinion. They just have too much upside there at that position with the production before and in their current offensive situations to say that Fannin should go ahead of all that. So, again, you either have to get him at cost or a little less to feel good about it. And even then, you're probably going to be a little disappointed. So, I want to go a few spots lower to make sure that we're getting the value we need out of Harold Fannin. Now, that's a very high target share. We'll see if it keeps up. They're definitely going to get the rookie receivers involved, but they are rookies. So keep that in mind. So if anyone would cut into those targets, mainly it would be Judy. And he could see a good chunk here among the receivers. They also throw to the backs to some degree here. They'll do that with Monken, but 21%. I mean, I don't see that necessarily going down, but you just have to factor in all the things that could change in variables for Fannin that weren't there because it's pretty steady. You had Sanders, you had the offense, he had to be the target by necessity because they didn't have a lot of wide receiver and Joku wasn't a factor. So all those things lined up pretty well. So I think all things considered, it was a pretty good offseason because you get Monken coming over with Andrews and likely experience. So they know the value of what he can do. There's still a chance that Sanders holds the job and Watson isn't quite ready. But Watson could also be targeting Fannin quite a bit. I mean, keep in mind, Watson did that there in Houston, and we haven't seen too much of him here in Cleveland to figure that out. But I think Fannin has a nice floor here again. Tight end 9, 8, 7, anywhere there is good. 6, a little rich, but you are going to be very comfortable about his return where you take him that you can start him in more weeks than not as a reliable tight end 1 in the top 12. So we do need to look at the rest of this roster. I mentioned Concepcion, Boston, Watson, Sanders. Is there anyone you should look at here beyond Dylan Sampson as a late flyer behind Judkins? We'll get into that here to close today's show. Support for today's episode comes from Square. That's right, from Square. And with Square, they're going to help your small business thrive and hit what it needs to do. The business platform helping sellers become neighborhood favorites. Whether you're preparing for a busy season or managing everyday demand, Square helps keep your business moving with everything from payments and online orders to inventory, staff management, more all in one place so business owners can spend less time managing tools and more time focusing on their customers. Square helps simplify the everyday work behind running a business while giving owners the tools they need to keep growing. It's something you notice when you're supporting the local businesses you love. When I go down the street later today to get some coffee, I'll know that they're using Square and I know what their reward system is and I know how close I am to getting that discount. And they tell me it's so easy for them to track. Payments are a breeze for them. So I can see why it's great for small business. When you're busy in that rush, that morning rush, a lot of people are getting their coffee. Square really keeps things moving at that business, and they can help any business to really help focus on the thing that matters most, the customer. Square helps you run your business more smoothly, bringing payments, operations, and insights together in one place. So you're ready for whatever's next. Right now, listeners can get up to $200 off Square hardware when you sign up at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's square.com, SQUARE.com/go/LockedOnNFL. Get started with Square and build a setup that works the way that you do. All right. Are there any other Browns that we want to look at in fantasy football? Let's first look at who do you think is going to be the starting quarterback? Let's get into that. Now, Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, they're both well into the 30s in fantasy rankings. Let's look at it from this way. We're not going to go after either of these guys, especially when we're not sure what the battle's going to be like in the end. Sanders has already showed that this offense doesn't have a lot of potential for that production. And Deshaun Watson might be someone you look at because he can run a little bit more, but he also hasn't done a lot in several seasons. And I just wouldn't trust him too much to shake off that rust and suddenly be productive. And who knows how much running he's going to do. He's a lot older quarterback than we saw the last time when he was fully healthy to get things done. And Sanders can move, but we haven't seen the numbers there on the ground, and that's not a big part of what he wants to do with his game. So I don't also see that. Even though you have Monken, who did have Lamar Jackson, I don't know if they'll suddenly unleash this guy. Sanders not nearly as fast as Jackson, and Watson again probably lost a step and not the same type of guy to give you any cheat code value. That said, who's the better quarterback? It's actually surprising, but I think it's Shedeur Sanders because we're not looking for too many assets here. Watson is not a check down guy. He takes off and runs. So if you have the shorter intermediate passes, you're more likely to get those thrown by Shedeur Sanders. Then Deshaun Watson is going to take off and run to whatever degree it is. He also tries to extend play and throw downfield, but he's going to be more frustrated with this offense because Jerry Judy's more an intermediate slot guy. He's going to need Concepcion or Boston. Stretch field Boston is not exactly a straight up modified blazer. Concepcion is that guy, but you have to get him in space and make those big, quick plays. And again, that's another thing that Sanders can do, get the ball into Concepcion's hand into open field. I'm hoping he has a bigger role, Concepcion, because he could do some damage here in the shorter passing game. So you look at the receivers right now, it's Concepcion at 53, Jerry Judy at 57, and Denzel Boston, the other rookie, at 59. So I think this is ranked properly. I don't think Boston's going to be much of a factor as a rookie. I'm just going to take him out of the equation, especially with Fannin being a big part of what they do. At Concepcion, the key for him having value, and I don't want anything to do with Judy. I'll say that as well. He's got to cut into some of those looks that Judy gets in the middle of the field, the shorter routes where he can use his quickness in the open field to have some opportunities to make big plays. Now, and Watson, I think in the end is better for Denzel Boston if they go in that direction because Boston is a big body who can get to the outside and make some plays. Maybe it's also a little bit better to make Isaiah Bond a factor. I think if you want to have Cedric Tillman and Concepcion and Judy be more involved, I think you would have to have Shedeur Sanders. So it's weird, but Sanders, I think, is going to facilitate these weapons. If we're not individually targeting the quarterback in fantasy, we want to root for the quarterback that's going to put more people in position to make plays. And I think that's Sanders. Again, Watson, we have to see something from him. And again, I know they want him to start. They're holding on to him, but there's just so much we don't know here. It's a new offense. We haven't seen Watson really be effective in a while in Cleveland. It's just been very limited disasters we know all around here for the Watson tenure. This is they're taking their shot because they have nothing else they can do. They're kind of stuck with his contract and they want to see what they have here before they blow it up with Sanders and Watson and move on to their next quarterback. Maybe it's Arch Manning, maybe it's Trinidad Chambliss, Dante Moore, somebody else is probably going to be the starting quarterback in Cleveland next year barring a big Sanders breakout here. Watson's going to have to play out of his mind to be trusted at that cost here to go in that direction. So, again, Sanders, a guy, he's not great, but he can facilitate and get rid of the ball and not call his own number to steal some rushing and receiving yards from some of these guys. So, again, going back, I think it's still Dylan Sampson that we're looking at, RB49. So, very cheap flyers you can take. If I'm going to take a flyer on the second guy, it's going to be Concepcion. Very talented rookie. Can get him in the open field. I could see his role progressing as the season goes on. If you don't draft him, you can look at him as a priority waiver ad. I think he'll have some value at least later in the season here for the Browns as they start to figure out more things in this offense, who they want to get going. I think there's a bit of Zay Flowers in Concepcion there that you can look at, some open field quickness. And of course, Monken had Zay Flowers in Baltimore. So got to draw from some of that. Lincoln also could be, throwing downfield with Watson. He was there for a little bit of time in Tampa and learning some of the no risk it, no biscuit stuff with Bruce Arians. So there's that in play here as well. So there's things that you look at with Monken. You're not quite sure what the identity of his offense is. What I think it is they're going to tailor it to the strengths of what they have, and that's a good thing with Monken. I think that for the most part they did that with Kevin Stefanski as well. So we'll see if management puts pressure. Hey, got to put Watson out there. We're paying him a lot. That could not lead to some great things here if you're forced and there's some dysfunction here with Monken and the play calling and having to play Watson. So again, Sanders, as weird as it sounds, again, he might be their best quarterback option for what we need here from really everyone, Judkins, Fannin, all these guys getting the job done or the way we'd like in fantasy. Again, to recap, Judkins a little too expensive, but still a worthy target there as a borderline RB2 flex. Harold Fannin, take him, but expect not too much upside there if you take him at tight end 6 and getting basically what you paid for at tight end 7, 8, and 9. And with everyone else, again, take a shot at Concepcion, as rankings would say, as a wide receiver 5, lead Judy and Boston, unless you see something there in midseason for a waiver pickup. So the Cleveland Browns, not much there, but you do have to value every team in fantasy. We've broken down all those teams now through the AFC North. Yeah, we put a bow on this division. We have one more thing to talk about here, the bold predictions for this division. So we'll have the top 6 bold predictions involving players, teams that you want to look at. Michelle Medjuk will be back for that show. Then we'll turn our attention to our next division, which is the AFC South. So can't believe it. We have 24 teams down, 8 more to go. If you missed any of those previous episodes, check it out. If you never missed an episode, the Everyday Club is meant for you. Exclusive Discord access and ad-free episodes of the show. And don't forget, you'll have access to a really good chat here as we get closer to draft time. Thanks today for tuning in to Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll do all that next week. Thanks so much for listening and watching. This has been Vinnie Iyer. Bye, y'all.